So these opening prayers are sort of in a short form, the preliminary practices that we have done in the past sessions, these visualizations of, the Buddha and all sentient beings, and generating an altruistic intention to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. The four immeasurable thoughts are these thoughts of wishing for the happiness and free from suffering and joy, and all for sentient beings. The seven limb practice is what we will be doing today, one of the preliminary practices. And this is a way of developing our positive force or positive potential, and connecting with the gurus, the Buddhas, and overcoming obstacles that we have to the path. The mandala offering is an offering that we make of a purified universe to the Buddhas and the gurus. Yeah, and that's what those prayers are. And they're all part of the preliminary practices, which are something that that a Buddhist would do before any session, any teaching session, or any meditation session. Okay, so we will start with the taking refuge in generating bodhicitta. We'll do these in this prayer in the Tibetan transliteration, and there's a little melody that goes with it. If you know the melody, it's pretty simple. You can catch on pretty quickly. And then you can just also read the translation underneath. And we'll do this taking refuge in generating bodhicitta prayer 3 times. Sangye chodang soki choknam la jangchu bardu dagni kyapsuchi dagi chenyen gipe sonam ki rola penchir sangye druparsho sangye chodang soki choknam la Jangju bardu dagni kyapsuchi dagi chenyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye druparsho sangye chodang soki choknam la Jangju bardu dagni kyapsuchi dagi chenyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye druparsho. And then we will recite the 4 immeasurable thoughts once in English. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And then we'll go to the 7 limb prayer. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merits of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until samsara ends, and turn the wheel of dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate the merit created by myself and others to the great enlightenment. And now as we sing this mandala offering in Tibetan, what you want to do is visualize a completely purified universe, purified consciousness, purified form, and offer this to the Buddha. O zaji perki jokshin meto dram rirabling ji ni degen padi sangye jingdu mi de ulwagi drokun namda chingla chepasho. And then you offer this visualization into the heart of the Buddha as you say, Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niriyatayam. All right. So before we get into the preliminary practices, I want to go over again some aspects that we hadn't touched on about the clear light mind. And the reason that we can actually become a Buddha, become enlightened, is because we have what is known as a clear light mind. And this clear light mind has the potential, every sentient being, every conscious being has a clear light mind, not just humans, every being has a clear light mind. And we have the potential to take that clear light mind, to develop it all the way to the highest evolutionary level of consciousness and form, which would be what a Buddha is. So a Buddha is the culmination or the peak of the evolution of consciousness and form. The Buddha started out as a sentient being, just like the rest of us. And over time, eons and eons of time, evolved, developed, and reached this level, which is perfect loving kindness, perfect compassion, profound wisdom, reaching to the level of omniscience. But the Buddha is not a god or a creator god, nor is the Buddha a replacement for a creator god or a substitute for a creator god. So the clear light mind has three factors to it, which we haven't talked about before. And they are abiding factors, factors that remain the same all the time. They are evolving factors, factors that can grow and evolve over time. And then there are factors that allow the clear light mind to be inspired and uplifted, that the clear light mind can be communicated to and the clear light mind can communicate. So we'll go over these. The abiding factors, the ones that remain all the time, are this, what they call, yeah. Well, this is general clear light mind stuff. And we've talked a lot about other stuff too. So, but I'm going to continue to go over that other stuff quickly. Yeah. So the abiding factors, the factors that remain the same, that are always the same, is the clear light mind has this these aspects of clarity, awareness, and knowing or understanding. Awareness and knowing, clarity, awareness, and knowing. This never changes. This is with us all the time. The clear light mind is functioning in us right now all the time, but it's such a subtle mind that we're not aware of it. We're more aware of our grosser minds, such as the minds that have to do with seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking conceptual thoughts. That's where we are all the time, and we don't actually recognize the clear light mind, which is there all the time as well. So another abiding factor, besides the awareness, the clarity, and the understanding or knowing nature of the clear light mind, another abiding factor is what's called the emptiness of the clear light mind. This remains constant all the time, the emptiness. And emptiness simply means, it refers to an absence of existing in some kind of impossible way that just could not possibly exist. So since this is the subtlest level of mind, the clear light mind is kind of like emptiness itself. So the clear light mind is, well, let me go through the Alexander Berzin definition, which we talked about before. The clear light mind is the subtlest level of activity of consciousness, the subtlest nature, or the subtlest mind, the subtlest consciousness. It is continues without beginning and without end, without any break, even into death, and even all the way to Buddhahood. It is non-conceptual. It does not have any kind of conceptual thoughts or conceptual cognition. It is individual, and it constitutes what we would call the mental continuum or the mind stream of every living being, of each living being. The clear light mind does not have any kind of appearance making, and this is where the impossible thing comes in. The way we exist, the way we experience things with our senses and our conceptual mind, is we see things as appearances. We see that all phenomena and things are out there, and me, the self, is in here. There's a sense of me and mine, myself, my body, my mind, everything to do with me, my belongings. But then everything out there is also phenomena, and we see that all of these things, it appears to us as if they exist independently of one another, that they are not connected, that they are not dependently arising. If we analyze it enough, we can see that everything is dependently interconnected and is a dependent arising, but that is not the way it appears to us. Now, with the clear light mind, because it's the subtlest form of consciousness, there is no appearance of that at all. There is no appearance of that at all. So that is one of the aspects of the clear light mind. Okay, so the abiding factors: the awareness, the knowing, the understanding, and the emptiness. The evolving factors of the clear light mind is that understanding can develop. The clear light mind can develop. The clear light mind can grow in its understanding. The clear light mind can grow in its awareness. And the other evolving factor is that there's something in the clear light mind called it's called a positive force. Sometimes that's translated as merit, but there's an ability for, through the positive force that the clear light mind has, there's that ability that allows it to grow and develop through in a positive direction, not in a harmful direction. And then the third, there's the abiding factors, the evolving factors, and the third are these aspiring and uplifting factors. And this has to do with, conjoined with the clear light mind, there is a very, very subtle kind of physical energy. In the Buddhist teachers, they will call it the indestructible drop. But this is a kind of energy that allows form to develop. It's why we can have a body. It's why we have a body. It's why things can appear the way that they appear to us. It's why the Buddha can have a form. The Buddha can have a body. It's why we can communicate, because this subtle physical energy has the ability to expand, develop, and this is how we can communicate. And this is how the Buddha can actually communicate with us, inspire us, and uplift us, because we're consciousness and form essentially inseparable since beginningless time and all the way to endless time. You know, it's so right now we're in we've due to the kind of consciousness we have, we've developed this human kind of body with this human kind of form and a human mind, which means it's really wonderful news, because it means that we've, over time, over eons, we've developed a lot of positive force, because you cannot have a human body and a human mind without developing that kind of positive force. So we should sort of rejoice in that just for ourselves, that we have what is called a precious human life, with enough mix of suffering and non-suffering that it's enough of a fire under our butt to keep going, to keep practicing, to keep moving forward. So we're in a very, very good position. It's a position that not every human has, actually. I mean, there are some humans on the planet who do not have that precious human rebirth at all. There could be many factors: where they're born in a war zone, where the kind of poverty they may live in, they may have physical or mental defects that don't allow them to be able to practice and study the Dharma. So this is a very positive thing for us. So the clear light mind has these abiding factors, the evolving factors, and these inspiring and uplifting factors. Then also I'm going to go into the Buddha nature again. Why we can then, what is it about the nature of all consciousness that is similar to a Buddha and can evolve into the mind and body of a Buddha? And the first is that all conscious beings can take in information, and they call this in terms of the Buddha, they call this mirror-like wisdom. But we can take in information from all of our senses, like the way a mirror can take in all of the information all at once. Then there is a nature that we know what things are. We sort of know what the sphere of our existence is. We know that we as humans, we're living here, we're living in a body. We know we have houses and cars, and we live on the planet, and the planet's in the universe, but also other sentient beings who may not have that kind of mind or that kind of body that can sense all of those things. They also know what the things are in their sphere of existence. They know what the grass is, or the worms know what a pebble is. They know what the ground is. They don't call it that, but they know what these things are. Then we have the ability or the nature to be able to put things together. So we can know that there are such things as cars and houses, but we can also put things together and know that a truck, a car, a motorcycle, yeah, anything like that. They're all kinds of transportation devices: truck, car, motorcycle, train, plane, boat. These are for transportation. We're able to put things together into categories. They call this the wisdom of equality, is when they were referring to the Buddha. Then the all consciousness know the individuality of things. We can then hone in on, say, a particular car, and say, that car is red, that car is a sedan, that car is a Mazda. We can discriminate the individual qualities of a thing. Same for all sentient beings within their sphere of existence. Insects and birds, they know the individual qualities of the things. They know what food is, what food isn't. They can discriminate. And then the fifth is that we know how to do things. And it's obvious with humans. Humans know how to do a lot of things. All of the things we've built, the infrastructure, everything that we've done, we know how to do a lot of things. But if you look at all sentient beings within their sphere of existence, they know how to do things, how to accomplish things. So you take this all the way to the level of Buddhahood, and you go, this first one, the mirror-like wisdom, taking in information. It means that the Buddha can take in the entire universe, everything that exists all at once. The Buddha can take that in like a mirror. When we talk about the ability to know what things are, or the sphere of existence, with the Buddha, it's called the wisdom of the sphere of truth. And that would be that the Buddha knows that everything exists as emptiness. Everything exists as a dependent arising. Everything is empty of existing individually, the way it appears to us and to other sentient beings. The Buddha knows this. The Buddha also knows that everything is capable, all consciousness is capable of transforming into a Buddha, to go all the way to Buddhahood. Then in terms of putting things together, the wisdom of equality with the Buddha, the Buddha sees that all sentient beings equally want to be happy. They equally do not want to suffer. There is no discrimination in terms of good, bad, I don't like this one, I like that one, we're going to reward this one, we're going to punish that one. The Buddha is not like that at all. The Buddha equally sees that all beings want to be happy, they don't want to suffer. And like I said before, equally sees that they have the potential, they have the positive force, if they can be inspired, to go all the way to reach their full, the peak of consciousness, the evolutionary peak of consciousness, which is Buddhahood. Now, in terms of knowing the individuality of things, this is called, with the Buddha, is called the wisdom of discriminative insight. And a Buddha can look at any sentient being, know exactly what their karma is, know exactly what their complete history is since beginningless time, and know exactly what to do or to say to help that being along, move that being along the path to Buddhahood. And then the final one, this is the knowing how to do things. This is the wisdom of accomplishment. So the wisdom of accomplishment is that the Buddha has the capability of guiding us and leading all sentient beings to this highest evolutionary state of consciousness, enlightenment. So I wanted to go over those again because the preliminary practice that we're going to do, what I've been doing is alternating. There are six preliminary practices. So I started out in the first session, we did taking refuge. There's a refuge visualization. You take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. You imagine all these sentient beings around you, develop an altruistic intention to attain enlightenment, to benefit all those sentient beings. Then in the second session, we did this merit field visualization, the seven limb puja or the seven limb practice, and the mandala offering, and those and then there's the petitions that you make to the Guru and the Buddha, which we'll also do today, and those constitute the six preliminary practices. So we're going to do the second half again, which are the merit field visualization and the seven limb puja, the mandala offering, and petitioning the Guru Buddha. And then we will go into the main topic for today. So we'll start out again. This is this 9 breaths that we do that we talked about before. This is to basically neutralize our mind. The way the Tibetans talk about this, they say if you want to dye a cloth a particular color, it's much easier if that cloth is white. If the cloth is not dirty, does not have stains on it, or it's not another color, you don't want to have that cloth to be a white, sort of a white neutral color. Well, the same with the mind. If we want to be able to infuse our mind and take in these concepts and take in these practices, we need to get ourselves to a sort of neutral state where we're not thinking about other things, worrying about other things, that we get ourselves to a point where we're able to really focus and concentrate on the practices. So this is what these 9 breaths are all about. Did you go up front? She went up front. Okay. Can you just check on her and make sure she has her walker? Yeah. It's my mother has gone roaming. So the 9 breaths, if you recall, consciousness pervades the entire body in what are called, these are invisible channels that are in the body, and the consciousness, they're similar. They would be associated, say, with our nervous system, but they're not physical. Or they're very, very subtle, a very subtle physical energy. The consciousness then rides on the breath the way a rider would ride a horse, is how they put it. The consciousness rides on the breath. As you breathe in, the consciousness rides on the breath and goes throughout the body to these different areas. So what we're going to be doing is working with the main 3 channels. There is a central channel that runs at the front of your spine all the way to the crown of your head. And there are 2 side channels that are on either side of that central channel that run from the base of your spine on either side of the central channel up to the crown of your head, but then down through here and then out through the nose. So you breathe in, goes up through the crown, down the sides, and then you breathe out. So the way we're going to do this, if you all recall, the 9 breaths, the first breath, you'll breathe in with your right nostril, and you'll just imagine that the breath goes up to the crown, down the right side of the central channel, all the way to the base of the spine, up the left side, all the way to the crown, and then out through the left nostril. So we'll do that 3 times. Then we'll reverse it, starting with the left nostril and just doing the opposite. And then the 3rd time, we'll breathe in through both nostrils. And when it comes down to the base of the spine on either side, then you go up the central channel and all the way up through the crown of your head. So we'll just start with those. We'll do those 9 breaths, and then we'll go right into the merit field visualization. When you're ready, reverse the order of breathing. Now breathe in through both nostrils, all the way down to the base of the spine, and then up through the central channel and out through the top of the crown. Now we'll go into the visualization of the merit field, or you could say the positive force field. And this is based on visualization given by Genlam Rinpa. He was a scholar and a meditator from Tibet who came to the US in the 80s and 90s and taught quite a bit. And he passed away in 2003 in Dharamsala, India. So imagine that your mind is like space. Perfectly clear, expansive space. And imagine that this mental space, consciousness space, is conjoined with an awareness of bliss. Bliss and emptiness combined. Out of this bliss and emptiness, almost the way a bubble arises out of water, visualize that you are in a completely purified environment. A beautiful, lush, green meadow. This meadow sparkles with light, has a jewel-like nature. In the sky above the meadow, appearing like a rainbow appears in the sky, is a variegated, multicolored lotus. And seated in that lotus, also of the nature of a rainbow, transparent yet vivid, is the image of the Buddha. This Buddha is in the form of the historic Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, but is the synthesis of all enlightened beings, is the synthesis of the Dharma, all of the Dharma, and is the synthesis of all highly realized beings, the Sangha, who help us along the path to enlightenment. And finally, and most importantly, this Buddha is one in nature with your guru. If you don't have a guru, then think of this Buddha as your guru. You are standing in this meadow, facing this, what we call a field of positive force. And the analogy is that just like any field that we plant seeds in, if the field is good soil, and this is definitely good soil, and we cultivate it properly, the seeds that we plant will ripen to full fruition. The fruition that is going to ripen here is our full enlightenment. So imagine that you were standing in this meadow facing the Buddha, and on either side of you, stretching out on either side, imagine parts of yourself from the time your earliest memories. If you can imagine when you were an infant, imagine that. Imagine when you were a toddler, when you were 5, 10, 12, 15, and on up until now. And pull these aspects out of yourself and line them up on either side of you. These parts of yourself don't actually exist now, but how they do exist as habitual propensities and imprints in your mental continuum. You carry this with you all of the time. So the person you were, or the child you were at 5 years old, is still having an influence on you as an adult at the age you are now, because there is a mental imprint in your continuum that plays into who you are now. In the same way, all of our previous lives, all the previous life forms that we've had since beginningless time, leave and have left imprints on our mental continuum or our mind stream. And they function in our mind stream even now. So imagine behind you are all of the previous life forms that you've ever had since beginningless time. They say it's like as many tiny atoms as exist in the universe are the numbers of these previous life forms. Imagine that all the life forms take on a precious human life form so that they can understand the Dharma, that they're with you on this and are supporting you. So now we go into the 7-limb puja. And the first part of this puja is called prostration. And if you recall the prayer we said at the beginning, it's reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. So imagine that you, all the parts of yourself from this life, and all of your previous rebirths, prostrate 3 times. The first prostration, we're prostrating to the Buddha, and we're prostrating with our body, with the idea that all of the actions of our body can be guided by the Buddha Guru. So imagine that you all prostrate once with your body. The second prostration is a prostration of speech. And the idea here is that all of our speech will be guided by the Guru Buddha. And with gratitude and with humility, we prostrate with our speech. And then the third is a prostration of mind. And this is prostrating, connecting with gratitude and true humility to our Guru Buddha, that our mind will follow, will come under the guidance of the Guru Buddha. And so all of the parts of ourself, again, prostrate with our mind. This first limb serves as an antidote to our arrogance, to thinking that we know what's going on, we know how to do everything. We really need to develop this sense of connection, gratitude, and true humility in order to move forward on the path. The second limb of the 7-limb practice, in the prayer that we read this morning, is I present clouds of offerings, every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. So imagine that you, all the parts of yourself from this life, and all the previous life forms, send clouds and clouds of offerings, whatever they may be. Whatever the 5-year-old wants to offer, let the 5-year-old offer that. Whatever you want to offer, you offer that. Whatever you think, whatever the previous life forms, what they would think would be the best thing to offer, they all offer this, so that there are waves and oceans of offerings going up into the sky surrounding the Buddha on the lotus. Now transform all of these offerings into the most precious offering that you could ever give to the Buddha. And this would be your intention to follow the Buddha's guidance all the way to enlightenment for the benefit of sentient beings. So you take these clouds of offerings and bring them into a sphere of light in front of the heart of the Buddha. And this sphere of light has the intention, hold your intention, to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. And you offer this to the Buddha. And the Buddha Guru, with great joy, takes it into their heart. The next limb of the 7-limb puja is called confession. The prayer goes, I confess all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time. This is this confession, or in a way it's purification, has 4 aspects to it. And a way you can remember them is these aspects all begin with R. There is regret, reliance, remedy, and resolve. So the first of these, regret, is that you regret from your heart all of the afflictive emotions that you've ever engaged in. Emotions from all of the afflictive emotion families that we've discussed in previous classes. Our anger, our malice towards others, our hatred, our attachment, our clinging desire, our desire to control and manipulate others, our envy and jealousy, our arrogant pride, and this afflictive doubt, which causes us to have anxiety and depression and guilt. All of these have hurt me. First of all, we have to realize that these are hurting us. This is the essence of what is called in Buddhism renunciation. We're not renouncing anything that's good, or we're not renouncing any kind of pleasure. We're renouncing all of these afflictive emotions, disturbing emotions that hurt us and also hurt others. And finally, what we are regretting is our ignorance, our mistaken, active, wrong views about the nature of self and the nature of phenomena. All of this, the afflictive emotions and the wrong views, only serve to harm ourselves, harm others, and they bind us to a seemingly endless cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death. So as if we had taken poison and we're looking for the antidote and the doctor that can help us with this poison, we regret all of this. The second part of this confession or purification is called reliance. And here we're relying on there are 2 aspects to this. First of all, we're relying on the Guru as our guide, the Guru Buddha as our guide, the Dharma as the pathways of consciousness that we take to enlightenment, and the Sangha as those fellow travelers along that pathway with us, some who are far advanced and some who are at the same level, but they're fellow travelers who help us, support us, and inspire us along the way. We rely on this to develop all the way to enlightenment. The second reliance is on all sentient beings, friends, enemies, and strangers. We rely on friends, enemies, and strangers because it's only through them that we can develop our good qualities, our patience, our compassion, our loving kindness, our generosity. So, what we have here are the two wings of Buddhism: the wisdom wing, which is following the Buddha all the way to enlightenment, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and the compassion wing, re engaging with sentient beings in a way.
Can you move your car? They're trying to push the cart through. They're moving out today, and they need to get through there. Sorry, I didn't think of it. But out of compassion for them.
Out of compassion for the sentient beings. I love it. Okay.
Well,
so that is
that's called Buddhism.
Absolutely. So that is the reliance. We're relying on the Buddhas and the sentient beings. After all, we want to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So then the third aspect of this purification or confession is called remedy, and these would be the actual antidotes. And of course, any meritorious action, such as saying mantras, helping someone across the street, giving food to the hungry, charity, all of those things could be considered antidotes. They're remedies. But the most important antidote, the most important remedy is itself the Dharma. So to listen to the Dharma, study the Dharma, contemplate the Dharma, and meditate upon the Dharma until the Dharma becomes a habitual propensity in your mind stream, so that you have at your fingertips in any given situation the knowledge of knowing what to do, how to respond, that will be most beneficial. And that is the actual remedy. That is the actual antidote. It's the Dharma. And then the fourth part of this confession or purification is called resolve. And here we're resolving, going forward, to take a firm stance of caution in regards to all of our afflictive emotions, to be aware of them and to be cautious before we engage in those afflictive emotions, to prevent us from causing any more harm to ourselves and to others. This means studying these afflictive emotions, being aware of what they are, the things that we've talked about. And then the other part of this resolve is that we resolve to grow all of our good qualities: the loving kindness, patience, generosity, ethical discipline, as well as growing our wisdom, continue to grow our understanding of emptiness and our meditative concentration. And this constitutes this third limb of confession and purification. And what this serves as the antidote. It's the antidote to what are known as the three poisons: ignorance, attachment, and anger. So it's a very important part of this seven-limb practice. Then the fourth is called rejoicing. And here we rejoice in the merits of all holy and ordinary beings. So we're rejoicing in any good that we see anyone do, any benefit that anyone brings. It doesn't even have to be a human. It can be an animal. It can be anything. If we see any good in any living being, we rejoice in that goodness. We rejoice in their qualities. In terms of the holy beings, our gurus, teachers, our spiritual teachers and guides, of course we rejoice in their good qualities. And we're tremendously grateful for that, because without them, without our teachers, without our spiritual guides, we would be lost. So this limb serves as an antidote to disparaging our teachers and disparaging others. An antidote to perhaps disturbing the mind of our spiritual teachers through our actions. Then we move on to the fifth, and this is a request for our spiritual teachers, the gurus, the Buddhas, to remain until samsara ends, to not desert us, to not leave us alone, but to stay with us all the way until we ourselves reach enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. When we then would stay and help all other sentient beings reach enlightenment. And this serves as an antidote. Yeah, this serves as the antidote to
Samsara.
well, this is actually to stay until samsara ends, and this is the one. Actually, sorry, this is the one that is about disparaging or disturbing the minds of our teachers. We want to recognize the value, the value of our teachers.
I mean, this whole seven limb.
Yeah, the whole seven limb is about the connection with the gurus and Buddhas. But this one is the previous one, which was rejoicing. You rejoice in all these good qualities. This is an antidote actually to jealousy. I had it wrong. This is an antidote to our jealousy and envy that may occur, especially it could be other members of the sangha, but it also could be other people that we should rejoice in their good qualities, not be jealous of them. This one, where we're asking the gurus to stay until samsara ends, is we are it's an antidote to our sort of maybe deserting our teachers, disparaging our teachers, or displeasing our teachers in some way. To recognize their value. Then the sixth one is another request is for our teachers, our gurus, to turn this wheel of dharma until samsara ends.
That was very Buddhist.
Very. It was all part of the practice.
So the hug with Patricia.
Oh. They can see out the window what he's doing.
Guys, she snagged him.
She didn't remember who I was.
No, but she hugged you anyway,
She said I should come back here alone.
Oh.
Anytime
Oh. That's my mother, folks. Okay, so where were we? Number six, yeah. Requesting them to remain until samsara ends. Turn the wheel of dharma. So that's to turn the wheel of dharma, to request them to continue to teach the dharma, is an antidote to when we kind of fall off the wagon. We don't continue with our practice. It lapses. We procrastinate. This is just normal. This is just what happens. So we're making this request for them to continue, despite us, despite our flaws, to continue to turn this wheel of dharma. Okay. And then the seventh one is we dedicate any merit or any positive force, that has grown through this practice. We dedicate that positive force into this merit field, this field of positive force, sort of like putting it into the bank. We dedicate this positive force to the benefit and enlightenment of all sentient beings. And that completes the seven limb practice. Now we move on to the mandala offering. And here we visualize, as we did at the beginning, prayers, you visualize a purified universe, purified consciousness, purified form, everything functioning, perfect harmony, perfect interdependence. And as I chant this prayer, you can visualize in any way you wish this mandala, how you visualize it. Ozajipati chokshing meto, tram lingji, nidegen padi, sangye jingdu migde urwagi, drokum nam dakshingla, chapashu. And then you send this mandala into the heart of the Guru Buddha as you say, Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Yadiyataya. And then the final of the preliminary practices, the sixth preliminary practice, is we're petitioning the Guru Buddha. And here we imagine we're there with the Buddha in front of us, Guru Buddha in front of us. And we ask the Guru Buddha to help to inspire us and guide us so that we can remove all of our afflictive emotions, so that we can apply the proper antidotes to these afflictive emotions and get rid of them. Secondly, we ask the Guru Buddha to inspire us, to guide us, so that we can develop our wisdom, so that we can develop an understanding of emptiness, an understanding of the clear light mind, an understanding of Buddha nature, and bring that understanding all the way to enlightenment for the benefit of sentient beings. And we ask that we can, knowing that the Guru Buddha is the guide that takes us along this path, we ask that the Buddha inspire us to only do what is pleasing to the Buddha, to only engage in acts that are pleasing to the Buddha, to follow that guidance. With that thought, a duplicate of the Buddha emerges from his heart, her heart. Remember, this is the Buddha and your Guru in the form of the Buddha. That Buddha then comes to the crown of your head. And again, start where we began. Imagine that your mind is like space. Clear, expansive. And you have an awareness of bliss. Then imagine that the Guru Buddha descends into your mind and merges with it. So the clear light mind of the Guru Buddha is also clear, aware, empty, and filled with bliss. And imagine that your mind and the Guru Buddha's mind then descend to the center of your heart chakra, where your clear light mind resides. And there is an open lotus. And you and the Guru Buddha merged as one. Take a seat in that open lotus, and then the lotus closes so that you keep that connection in your heart. And that completes those preliminary practices. So next session, I should say, our next session is we're going to have to postpone it. We have so many rentals. Every single one of our rentals, all 6 of them, have a turnover on Friday and Saturday. So there's just, and this is something we couldn't plan ahead of time because these are short-term rentals and it just happened. So we will postpone it to the next Saturday, which is July 3rd. I know that's 4th of July weekend, but who knows? But most of us are Zooming anyway. The Dalai Lama birthday party, yeah. So it will be, July 3rd. And we know we kind of have a,
6, but it's close enough.
we have our rentals are not so amazingly hectic as they are next week.
No,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So.
No.
What?
We want you to say,
Perfect.
That's wonderful. We can do some of that. Om Mani Padme Hum. I mean, that's a meritorious thing, especially if your heart is in
That would be
it.
a very good activity.
Yeah.
I think you guys were in Minnesota when we did 8,000 medicine Buddhas in the Kiwi. I was here.
Oh yeah, no, you were here. You kept lighting the fire. She was feeding the logs.
How could I forget?
We did 8,000 medicine Buddhas in the
That's a long
teepee.
mantra.
That
Yeah.
was 3 days of
Yeah.
doing that.
To sort of consecrate the
Omani Padme
teepee.
Hums,
Yeah.
That's easy. That's fast.
That's no problem.
Yeah.
You can do 60 of those in a minute.
No. Okay, so just as a review, last time we talked about the ethics. There was the ethic of restraint, which is sort of restraining yourself from engaging in harmful activities. There was an ethics of virtue, which was cultivating good qualities that help others.
Sorry, I'm on the
I know you're. And then there was a.
It's all Buddhism.
Okay.
It's practice. It's fun.
Uh-huh. And then
Mr. Teacher. Ethics.
there was restraint. Oh, the restraint, ethic of restraint, ethic of virtue, and then there was an ethic of altruism, which is, you dedicate your entire life to the benefit of all beings, all living beings. So I wanted to read something which I didn't read last time. It's a little Buddhist story, which sort of talks about the tools that you use to practice the ethics of restraint, virtue, and altruism. And those tools are heedfulness, mindfulness, and awareness. Heedfulness is a caution. Mindfulness is to be mindful of what your core values are, and be aware the state of your mind all the time. Is that my mother again?
It was upstairs.
Oh, okay.
It was upstairs.
Okay.
Not much up there. Well, there's a lot up there, but yeah.
Sorry, everybody. There's a lot going on here today. We have
Poltergeist.
the whole place is being rented by a family with something like 8 or 10 grandchildren.
Electric go-karts.
With electric go-karts, and my mother's very interested in that. She thinks she loves children, and so she's I think on the go.
And Patrick and Anna are moving.
Right, yeah, and then my nephew and his niece are moving today. So anyway, I want to read you. This is about heedfulness, but it also would be about mindfulness and awareness. Okay.
I'm sorry. Can you set this up again? What is this about? I'm sorry.
Last time we talked about there's ethics of restraining yourself from harming oneself or others, ethics of cultivating your virtuous qualities, and then there is an ethics of altruism, being of benefit, dedicating your life to the benefit of others. So there's a little Tibetan, and you use heedfulness, mindfulness, and awareness to do that. Mm-hmm. So there's a little Tibetan story that I wanted to read that exemplifies this, and you can visualize and get the sense of the kind of stance we want to be taking with this ethics, okay? In one classical Buddhist text, heedfulness is illustrated with a story about a man convicted of a crime who is ordered by the king to carry a bowl of sesame oil full to the brim while a guard walks next to him carrying an unsheathed sword. The convict is warned that if he so much as spills a single drop of oil, he will be struck down with the sword. We can imagine how careful and vigilant the convict would be. He would have complete presence of mind and total attentiveness. This story illustrates how closely related heedfulness is to the qualities of mindfulness and awareness. So if you think of that little image, throughout the day, and realize the danger of behaving unethically to ourselves,
right?
Not just to others, but to ourselves. It can motivate you to really practice these ethics, practice this heedfulness, this mindfulness, and awareness. Okay, so now we are going to get into cultivating key inner values.
What I see happening there is sort of my scorpionic tendency to be blunt and brutally observant in perhaps not complimentary ways will be now more thoroughly thought through. It won't be as spontaneous. It will be
Scorpionic.
Yeah, well, scorpionic. She's a scorpion. It's like
that's
with the sting with the tail.
I'm just surprised that's the motivation.
Well, she's saying.
Any excuse will do.
She's saying, what do you want to be more motivated?
No, I was just thinking, wow, it just reminds me of one thing that Venerable Rabina says this, even thieves have mindfulness.
Yeah.
So if you're picking a lock or robbing a bank.
Oh yeah, you have to have mindfulness.
Imagine you're robbing a bank and.
Yeah. So, but this is about ethics, you know. Yeah. This is not about robbing banks. Okay. So cultivating key inner values. Okay. How are we doing here? All right, doing okay. So he says, let us recall the two-pronged approach. So this is, again, from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Let us recall the two-pronged approach to genuine ethical practice. On the one hand, working to restrain our destructive emotions. On the other, actively cultivating our positive inner qualities. So last time we already talked a lot, I read a lot on compassion. And so now I'm going to go through some of these other qualities. Patience and forbearance. In the context of secular ethics, perhaps the antidote to destructive emotion with the most urgent and immediate relevance for our everyday lives is what is called sopa in Tibetan. Geshe sopa. Sopa. Yes. So we're going to find out what his name means. Though usually translated as patience, sopa also includes the virtues of tolerance, forbearance, and forgiveness. What it really means is the ability to endure suffering. It entails not giving in to our instinctive urge to respond negatively to our difficulties. But sopa has nothing to do with being passive or impotent. It is not a case of tolerating something just because you do not have the ability to hit back, nor is it enduring injustice grudgingly through gritted teeth. Instead, genuine patience requires great strength. It is fundamentally the exercise of restraint based on mental discipline. There are three aspects of patience or forbearance to consider: forbearance toward those who harm us, acceptance of suffering, and acceptance of reality. Patience toward the perpetrators of harm. As I've already suggested, reflecting on the fact that everything depends on a great many causes and conditions can do much to help us tolerate the wrongs inflicted on us by others. When people injure us in some way, it is helpful to recall that a vast array of factors will have contributed to their behavior. When we face aggression or disrespect, it is worth considering why the aggressive or disrespectful people are acting that way. Very likely, their behavior reflects difficulties they themselves are experiencing. Recognizing this can moderate our instinct to retaliate. It is also useful to remember that anger is not something anyone actually wants. When we ourselves get angry, for example, is it because we want to? No, it comes upon us involuntarily. Like falling ill, becoming angry is not something we do deliberately. Furthermore, given that the perpetrators of the harm are just like me and you, human beings who aspire to happiness and wish to avoid suffering, they too are deserving of our compassion and concern. Kindness and forgiveness are therefore much more appropriate responses to hostility than anger. As with the exercise of forgiveness, we need to distinguish between the act and the actor, between the harmful deed and the person who committed it. While remaining firm in our opposition to the unjust act itself, we can still retain our sense of concern and compassion for the perpetrator of that harm. You know, this makes me just think of politics. Think of the people who we love to hate. What he's saying here is it's not the person, it's what they're doing. It's the action. It's the action that we are saying is the problem, not the person.
Right.
And that's a huge distinction. And the world would be such a better place if we were able to do that.
What's really doubly weird is it's our interpretation of what we think they're doing.
Right.
Our interpretation of
it's coming from our own. We project onto our own, onto them our own interpretation. So it's complicated, and it's really good to listen to what he has to say here and to give it some serious thought. Okay, another form of patience. Patience through acceptance of suffering. An important dimension of the practice of patience or forbearance is the cultivation of greater acceptance of suffering and difficulties, which are, in fact, unavoidable parts of our existence. This training in patience takes the form of developing a genuine attitude of acceptance of the reality that life involves hardship. To be in denial about suffering or to expect life to be easy only causes a person additional misery. I do not mean to suggest that suffering is somehow good in itself. I simply mean that accepting it will make it easier to bear. Traveling the world, I've noticed that people in less developed countries whose lives are hard in material terms often seem more contented than those in more affluent countries who have relatively easy lives. Beneath the outward affluence in materially advanced societies lies a good deal of inner anxiety and dissatisfaction. While in poorer countries, I am often struck by the simple joy one often encounters. How to account for this? It seems that hardship, in forcing us to exercise greater patience and forbearance in life, actually makes us stronger and more robust. From the daily experience of hardship comes a greater capacity for accepting difficulties without losing an inner sense of calm. This is something I've also observed in some of my European friends. Those of my own generation who lived through the hardships of the Second World War seem to possess greater forbearance and strength of character than the younger generations who have never encountered such difficulties. The experience of losing friends and family, living with uncertainty, and making do on meager rations has, it seems, made that generation tougher. They are more able to cope with adversity without losing their humor. Of course, I do not want to advocate hardship as a way of life, but merely to show that if you relate to hardship constructively by seeing its benefits, it can bring you inner strength or fortitude. How, though, are we to deal with the ordinary setbacks of life? Again, I find the advice of Shantideva, the 8th century Indian thinker, especially helpful. Quote, if there is a solution, then what need is there for dejection? If there is no solution, then what point is there in dejection?
You often hear it translated worry,
Worry, yeah,
which is
yeah. If
also
there's
a helpful
yeah,
interpretation.
if there is a solution, what need is there for worry? If there's no solution, what's the point of worrying? You know,
Right.
I call this the no need, no point approach to dealing with problems. If a problem has a solution, then it should not be cause for excessive worry. Rather than feeling overwhelmed, we should simply work with a determination to reach the solution. If, after careful consideration, we conclude that there is no solution to be found, we gain nothing by worrying. Instead, the sooner we accept that the problem cannot be rectified, the easier it will be to carry on with our lives. Either way, there is no point in excessive worrying. Not only does it do us no good, but it can severely harm us by making us weaker, or worse, it can lead to depression. Of course, this is not to suggest that we should surrender to suffering. On the contrary, accepting suffering, far from being a surrender, is the first step toward combating its harm. By accepting hardship, we begin to see that it is not entirely negative. It can, for example, be a powerful force in bringing us together with others by enlivening our empathic or empathetic, compassionate natures. Above all, suffering helps us recognize our kinship with one another. And with this recognition, we are no longer overwhelmed by our own difficulties, but gain the strength we need to meet the challenges we face. Personal suffering can also be a catalyst for individual spiritual growth. In addition to making us stronger, it can bring us a kind of humility and help us to be more in tune with reality. These effects of suffering are recognized by all the world's major religious traditions. They are also something I have felt in my own life. I am in no doubt that my experience of exile has given me a deeper understanding of life than I would have if I were still living in Tibet as the privileged ruler of a country. And then the third type of patience is the patience through contemplation of reality. The third dimension of the practice of patience involves focusing on those facets of reality which we as individuals have the most difficulty in accepting. These may include, for example, aging or death. These topics are often regarded as taboo because many people just do not want to think about them. This seems to be particularly the case in more affluent societies, where consumerism promotes the culture of youth, and yet contemplating such topics can enhance our well being. Reflecting deeply upon the inevitability of old age and death and their roles as parts of our existence can lead us to greater tolerance toward these aspects of reality, which otherwise might cause us despair and dejection. As I've already suggested several times, everything in the world comes about as a result of many factors. In any given occurrence, our own actions are only one factor in a great range of causes and conditions. Similarly, there are always many sides to any situation. When, therefore, we suffer some misfortune, such as not getting the job we hoped for, it's worth considering that the same decision that disappointed us will have benefited someone else, perhaps someone in even greater need. Though not easy, such considerations can temper our sense of loss with some sympathetic joy at others' good fortune. At the same time, the simple act of moving the focus of our attention away from ourselves will have the effect of making the problem appear less unbearable. The benefits of cultivating patience are obvious. The practice of patience guards us against loss of composure, and in doing so enables us to exercise discernment even in the heat of difficult situations. It gives us inner space, and within that space we gain a degree of self-control which allows us to choose to respond to situations in an appropriate and compassionate manner rather than being driven by our compulsions. With constant cultivation, patience, as I've described it, equips us to deal with life's inevitable ups and downs. What is more, there is no doubt that patience is a quality that others appreciate tremendously. Through exercising patience, we naturally become far more appealing to others. It helps put people at ease in our presence and causes them to enjoy our company. But above all, patience is a powerful antidote to the destructive emotions of anger and frustration. All right, now he's talking about contentment as another key inner value. On my earliest trips to Western countries, I sometimes used to visit shopping malls. In those days, there were no such malls in India, and it was impressive to us Tibetans to see all the smart shops with their window displays lit up with all kinds of consumer products. Ever since childhood, I have had a love of mechanical objects like watches, so I found the modern mechanical and electronic gadgets in these stores most attractive. What was that store that always, the Sharper Image? He must have loved the Sharper Image. Yeah. Looking at them, I would sometimes think, oh, I would like this, I would like that. But then I would ask myself, do I really need it? Of course, most of the time the answer was no. So my first thoughts were coming from some kind of instinctive greed. But as soon as I checked myself and took a realistic view, I no longer felt any need to acquire or control those items. This is what I understand by the application of contentment. Referring to contentment as a key ethical value sometimes creates a little confusion. One might say that contentment is not itself an ethical value, since it concerns one's own well being rather than that of others. Isn't contentment what underlies the happiness that comes through living with a compassionate concern for others? If so, how can it be regarded as an ethical value to be nurtured in its own right? Moreover, one might say contentment can't be practiced, it has to be arrived at. When I talk about contentment as an ethical value in this way, what I'm really talking about is not a general state of well being or happiness, but a more specific notion of contentment, which in Tibetan we call chokshe. I don't know of any simple translation of this term in English or any other Western language, and since it is generally translated as contentment, I also use that term. However, what chokshe really means is an absence of greed. Literally, it means knowing what is enough, or knowing when to be contented. It means being able to find satisfaction without looking for more. So, contentment, according to this view, is something like the virtue of moderation. It implies a certain modesty of ambition or having limited desires. By living modestly and setting reasonable limits, we free ourselves from the sense of insecurity and insufficiency born of incessant craving. By practicing contentment, we allow ourselves to rest in an underlying state of satisfaction, confident in the knowledge that we are living by the ideals we seek to uphold. By limiting our wants and desires, we avoid suffering the dissatisfaction and frustration which greed generates. There is a saying in Tibetan that, quote, at the door of the miserable rich man sleeps the contented beggar. The point is not that poverty is a virtue, but that happiness comes not from wealth, but from setting limits on our desires and living within those limits with satisfaction. Cultivating contentment is especially important, I feel, in today's materialistic world of global consumerism. Materialistic society puts people under constant pressure to want more and spend more long after their basic needs are satisfied. Sophisticated advertising is designed to excite the imagination and to generate a perception that material goods will make us happy and that we are somehow lacking unless we acquire the latest accessory, gadget, or fashion item. The materialism of modern society therefore makes the practice of moderation and contentment a daily necessity if we are to resist succumbing to a sense of personal dissatisfaction born of unrealistic craving. Controlling our desire for more, learning to live within realistic limits, is not only in our own individual interest, it is also necessary if we are to overcome the challenges to life on earth that our incessant quest for more generates. The material resources of this planet are finite. Add the facts that the global population is rising rapidly and that those in the less developed countries naturally aspire to the same level of comfort enjoyed in the developed world, as is their right. And it becomes clear that our present path is unsustainable. The world's great natural spaces do much to maintain the environmental equilibrium of the planet. Yet forests, oceans, and other natural environments are being encroached on and destroyed, and during my own lifetime, many species of animals and plants have become extinct. So, the comfortable modern lifestyles that many of us take for granted and many others aspire to actually come at a considerable cost. The need for contentment is painfully illustrated by the recent financial crisis. He's talking 2008, the 2008 financial crisis, the repercussions of which are still being felt across our deeply interdependent world. It's easy to blame politicians for failing to sufficiently regulate financial institutions. Ultimately, though, this crisis was generated by greed itself, by the failure to exercise appropriate moderation and restraint in the blind quest for ever greater profits. Also, as an Italian businessman explained to me, there was excessive speculation. The word speculation itself means acting without full knowledge. In this case, the level of caution and humility appropriate to actions undertaken without full knowledge was clearly absent. Here, the problem was essentially one of arrogance and short-sightedness. A third issue was the lack of transparency, which allowed dishonesty and deceit to thrive unchecked. There was nothing inevitable about any of these factors. They are all simple ethical failings, chief among them which is greed. And the only effective antidote to greed is moderation and contentment. Of course, in extolling the benefits of simplicity and modesty, I am not suggesting that poverty is acceptable. On the contrary, poverty is a tremendous hardship, one that we must all do what we can to end. In addition to making survival a struggle, poverty tends to disempower people and make them feel cowed or demoralized. It can lead to profound mental distress and rob people of any opportunity for improvement of their economic situation. In these ways, it makes the poor suffer greatly. On the personal level, however, the sooner we accept that riches alone do not bring happiness, and the sooner we learn to live with a sense of modesty, the better off we will be, especially with respect to our happiness. Time and geography will always impose limits on how much wealth anyone can succeed in accruing in a single lifetime. Given this natural limit, it seems wiser to set one's own limits through the exercise of contentment. In contrast, when it comes to acquiring mental riches, the potential is limitless. Here, where there is no natural limit, it is appropriate not to be contented with what you have, but to constantly strive for more. Unfortunately, most of us do the exact opposite. We are never quite satisfied with what we have materially, but we tend to be thoroughly complacent about our mental riches. Okay, another key inner value, self-discipline. Closely connected to the value of contentment is that of self-discipline. In fact, the value of contentment presupposes the exercise of some degree of self-discipline, as indeed do all the inner values discussed in this book. The important point about the virtue of self-discipline is that it must be voluntarily embraced. When discipline is imposed from the outside, it is very rarely effective and sometimes can even be counterproductive. When discipline is imposed by fear, either fear of some external authority or fear stemming from our own cultural or religious conditioning, the individual often feels very little enthusiasm for it. As a result, imposed discipline rarely brings about inner transformation. On the other hand, if we adopt self-regulation voluntarily out of appreciation of its value and the benefits of refraining from bad habits, it's only natural for us to undertake it with greater determination. This in turn makes our self-discipline more enduring. In order to cultivate such voluntarily embraced self-discipline, we must once again take time to appreciate and dwell upon its many benefits, not just for ourselves, but also for others and even for humanity at large. By doing this, we can generate the enthusiasm required to maintain our motivation and determination. It's useful to begin by reflecting on the harm we do to ourselves, even physically, when we succumb to temptation and bad habits. Then we can also consider the harm that our bad habits inflict on others. It's easy to assume that our personal behavior and habits have no real effect on others, but this is seldom the case. Suppose, for example, that one member of a family, that our own personal behavior and habits have no real effect on others. He's saying that's not the case. Suppose, for example, that one member of a family is addicted to something like alcohol or drugs.
Yeah, we all know this.
Although, of course, the other family members will not suffer the direct physical and mental ill effects of the drug, this does not mean they will not be harmed. In all likelihood, they will be deeply afflicted by worry and concern, as well as by whatever other agonies and complications may accompany the situation. So, when considering the harm we inflict through a lack of self-discipline in our personal habits, we should always be mindful of those who care about us, who care about our welfare, and whose welfare is intimately connected to our own. It can also be useful to consider the harmful effects of a lack of self-discipline at a wider social level. In my view, the problem of corruption, which is prevalent in so many parts of the world, is actually nothing but a failure of self-discipline. Corruption is always a surrender to self-serving attitudes of greed, bias, and dishonesty. Even the existence of a fair and just legal system becomes of little value when that system is paralyzed by corruption. With the awareness that comes from contemplating the consequences of a lack of self-discipline, we can gradually develop a greater ability to resist temptation in our own life. Eventually, with sustained practice, self-discipline will start to come naturally and will no longer require conscious effort and willpower. At that point, when restraint and moderation come naturally, we begin to feel the great sense of freedom that comes with self-mastery. This virtue of self-discipline is extolled in all the world's major religious traditions. In Islam, for example, a strong emphasis is put on the virtue of sabr, steadfastness, self-control, patience, or fortitude. And those who have this quality, the sabirin, are said to be beloved of God. Gaining mastery over our destructive propensities through the exercise of awareness and self-discipline at the levels of body, speech, and mind frees us from the inner turmoil that naturally arises when our behavior is at odds with our ideals. In place of this turmoil come confidence, integrity, and dignity, heroic qualities all humans naturally aspire to. And then the last of the inner core
This is a
values.
lot of reading in
I know.
one chunk. You need to.
This is the last of it.
I know, but in the future, perhaps you keep the reading portions a little shorter, and have discussions so that you don't lose us, or at least.
Okay.
me.
All right, he'll say a few words about generosity, okay?
I mean, it's a lot of reading.
It
You
is,
can read it,
but teachings are a lot of words too, you know? A 2-hour teaching is a lot of words. You know, when the Dalai Lama teaches, it's a lot of words. When Rabina teaches, it's a lot of words. When Lama Pasang taught, it was a lot of words. Seems worthwhile to say a few words about the value of generosity. Generosity is the most natural outward expression of an inner attitude of compassion and loving kindness. When one desires to alleviate the suffering of others and to promote their well-being, then generosity in action, word, and thought is this desire put into practice. It's important to recognize that generosity here refers not just to giving in a material sense, but to generosity of the heart. As such, it's closely connected to the virtue of forgiveness. Without generosity of the heart, genuine forgiveness is impossible. All right, then I'll say one last thing. Joy in giving. An important aspect of the practice of generosity, I feel, is to take joy in it. In the classical Indian tradition, there is a custom of dedicating acts of generosity to a higher altruistic goal. This helps ensure that generosity is not blind or driven by partiality or bias, but is directed toward the greater good of all humanity. The custom of dedication also allows the giver to rejoice in the act of giving. Taking joy in giving is very helpful since it makes us more inclined to engage in similar acts of kindness and charity in the future. The great thing about giving is that it not only benefits the recipient, but it also brings profound benefits to the giver. And the more one gives, the more one enjoys giving. Okay. And now we will go into a meditation here.
Can you just review the headlines
Of the
factors we
inner-
just discussed?
The inner values, yeah. Patience and forbearance, which had 3 aspects. Patience towards the perpetrators of harm, patience through acceptance of suffering, and patience through contemplation of reality. Then there was contentment, which is a kind of satisfaction. Then there was self-discipline and generosity.
This kind of reminds me of the factors that Geshe Drogpa in his last advice to us.
Oh, the 7 points?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't perfectly align, but it reminds me of some, for example, he said to practice contentment.
Yeah. What were those 7 points? Why don't you just tell everybody what those 7 points and sort of speak up a little bit.
Well, I mean, the context was that when Geshe Drogpa was here for the very last time, he didn't really give any formal teachings. He kept saying he was sick, although he didn't appear to be sick. But in any case, we were driving back to Houston and stopped for lunch, and I asked him, do you have any, before you get on the airplane, do you have any final words of advice? And he very quickly outlined 7 things that he advised us to do. The first was they weren't necessarily in this order, but the first was to cultivate happiness. And he expounded on that a little bit. He then also said to generate, it might have been generate or cultivate joy, happiness. Then the other one was contentment. One of the other points was to develop contentment. One of the ones was, then another was to remember that when things are difficult in your life, to remember that it is samsara, you are in samsara, and so you should have no expectation that difficult things won't happen. So that's 3. Another one was to remember the interdependent. He said, remember that everything is empty. Everything is a dependent arising. Everything is uh, yeah, connected, as we've talked many times. That would be 4. Another one was that to take the long view. This was sort of to not become impatient with your spiritual progress, but to take the long view. Uh, and to be honest, I don't think I can't recall the other 2. They were sort of refinements or a little more detailed.
Yeah.
To take the long view and not to lose, not to give up, just to keep going. And
Yeah. Well, there is similarity there for sure. Yeah. To keep going is just to have enthusiasm. To keep on going. And since the way I've thought about this is if our consciousness, right? If it's beginningless, if it's endless,
right.
well then what's the point of worrying how quickly we're going to get this? But just keep trucking, keep going, and eventually, we're going to build up this positive force that they talk about, the merit that they talk about.
It's like the problem. There's the solution.
Yeah.
Just keep going. So don't worry about anything else. Just keep
Mhm.
going. Just keep doing. Keep trying. And eventually you'll get there.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Otherwise you end up derailing yourself from trying and doing. And then you don't get there.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that can happen with a practice is that you can feel bad if you sort of stop, or the practice becomes lax, or you sort of stop doing it.
Right.
And you what you just said applies to that. Just pick yourself back up, start over again, and then just
and
keep
don't
going.
beat yourself up in the process.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
this is a big one for me, and there's a recent additional uplifting thought, which is, what am I thinking? If I was enlightened, would be enlightened. I wouldn't, I would just, what am I thinking that having grown up Catholic, I felt like, I need to go to confession before I can go to Mass again, or, I need to go to confession before I take Holy Communion. This is like, duh, I'm not enlightened. I'm not going to be a perfect practitioner,
No, it comes with practice.
With territory.
Right.
Yeah, the whole point is you fall down, you get up. You fall down, you get up.
Exactly.
And, being obsessively compulsive about doing some ritual every day is not going to get you enlightened any faster than the person who keeps falling down and getting up, falling down. Everybody's going to get there.
Right.
Mhm.
Just got to keep going.
Because, just compulsive, people who are afflicted with obsessive compulsive disorder may from the outside look like, wow, what a great practitioner. They line up their 7 water bowls every day perfectly.
Yeah.
They do this perfectly. They set up this, perfect. They, you could set a clock by, when they're doing their practice.
Right.
One thing we've noticed is that in Buddhism is not devoid of what we call church ladies. It's that everything has to be perfect and just so, and don't do that, and this
Right.
that's sort of obsessive. I mean,
Right.
you have to have a sort of a generosity of, just let things be and just keep, do your best.
Right.
Yeah.
Incidentally, one of the other points that Geshe Drogpa made was, when not only when bad things happen to you, don't forget it's samsara.
Bad
When
things.
bad things happen to you, remember it's your karma. The arising or the
Right.
appearance of your own.
Or ripening
Karma.
of something, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
He didn't, by the way, lay it out in 7 points. Like, here's 7 points. We in the car.
Oh, she wrote it on a napkin at the.
Right.
We tried
Restaurant
to
we were at.
construe 7. We concluded that it was 7 points.
Right.
Yeah.
I do have it in a file, and we have sent it out here and there.
Okay. So let's move on to the final of this. We have about 20 minutes, which is a meditation, and we'll start with just focusing on the breath. And if you recall in the first session, remember I held up my hand and I was talking about we have 6 main minds, and they correspond. And these are much grosser. It's not the clear light mind.
Right.
We have 6 grosser main minds, which correspond to our 5 senses and our mental sense. So they, here's a way to sort of think about it. The eye organ is sort of like a camera. The eye organ just picks up the shape and the color.
Right.
But a camera is not aware. A camera doesn't know what it's doing. There's nothing there. It's just, and that's what the organ is. The eye organ is that. There is a consciousness, an awareness connected to that organ that is aware of what the shape and the color that's being picked up by the eye is. Same goes for the ear, the nose, smell, taste, touch, and the brain. The mind, the mental consciousness. There's a consciousness there that makes it all. When the consciousness is gone, I mean, might as well not even be working.
Right.
It's just sort of like, yeah. So so those consciousnesses. There are six of them, including the senses and the mental consciousness. So they say the way those consciousnesses are, and this refers to this. We're going to use this in the meditation. The way the consciousness are is they're kind of like a blank movie screen. We're not aware of those consciousnesses really. What we're aware of is what appears to the consciousness. So what we're aware of when we're watching a movie is not the screen, but all the moving images and the sound and everything that's on the screen. And we get wrapped up in those moving images and the emotions that are evoked by them. We're not wrapped up in the screen. So those are what are known as mental factors. The images moving on the screen are the mental factors. So we have, when I held up my hand, there were five omnipresent. There are many, many mental factors. There's 50 something of them, but there are five omnipresent ones that are with each one of these main mental minds. And they are volition, a will. I mean, if I said, well, what I did the last time, I said, look at your hand. Well, there's the volition. There's an intention. You're just going to bring your attention to the hand. That's the first one. Volition. Then there's contact. You make a conscious contact. Your eye sense consciousness contacts your hand and sees it. The third is attention. You can hold your attention to the hand. Then the fourth is you can discriminate. You can look at the actual, discriminate the distinguishing factors of the hand. And then the fifth one, there's always some kind of feeling involved with it. So when we go now, concentrate, just start, adopt a posture and then concentrate on your breath. Just breathing in and out through your nose. So use these mental factors. The first is a volition. You will yourself to focus on your nose, to focus on the breath actually going in and out of your nose. You make contact. You're making a contact with the nose sense consciousness, as well as there's a body sense consciousness, a tactile consciousness. You can even make contact with you can slightly hear the breath going in and out. Your eyes can be closed, but they're sort of focused down towards that area, right? So you can bring all of your main minds, your consciousnesses, to this fact of it, putting the contact there with the nose. Then you hold it there. You hold your attention there. You hold the attention at the air going in and out of your nose. Then you discern the characteristics of it. What does it feel like the breath coming in? What does it feel like the breath going out? And then the feeling that's evoked in this context, the point of this meditation is to train our mind to concentrate. So the feeling is you don't want to let go of that. You want to keep bringing your mind back to this so you can train your mind to concentrate. Concentration is extremely important for us to be able to gain the mastery it takes to go all the way to enlightenment. So this simple exercise of just watching your breath involves all of these mental factors and will help you when you're going to be distracted. You can just bring your attention back, focus on the breath. So let's just do that for a minute or so. I don't know about you guys, but I find when I focus all of my main minds on this object of meditation, and I focus those mental factors, the volition, the contact, the attention, the discrimination, and the feeling. I find that the distractions, I keep coming back. The distractions I'm able to let go because I've told my main minds this is where you're going. Otherwise, if we don't tell our main minds that, our mental consciousness is going to be all over the place doing what it naturally does. We're going to be drawn to all of the sounds we hear. But when we actually use some control over our own minds and bring it to the focus of whatever it is, whatever we want to concentrate on, it could be anything that requires our concentration. You bring those six main minds to it and those omnipresent mental factors to it, and it makes that the focus stronger. And I think over time, with practice, one could really develop high levels of concentration using those main minds and the mental factors. Yeah. Rabina Corton, Venerable Rabina, talked about that, and that was the first time I'd heard that in terms of applying it to meditation itself, a concentration meditation. And I find it really different, significantly different than I've just, don't give it a thought and just try and focus on my breath. I'm off somewhere else immediately. Yeah. So we'll do this, a meditation that is suggested here by the Dalai Lama. And this is training in compassion and loving kindness. So you start with a preliminary breathing exercise, which we just did. So this particular exercise is useful for occasions when you are struggling with your attitude or feelings toward a person with whom you have difficulty. First, bring that person into your mind. Conjure up a vivid image so that you almost feel his or her presence. Next, start to contemplate the fact that he or she also has hopes and dreams, feels joy when things go well, and feels sadness when they do not. In this, there is not an iota of difference between the other person and yourself. Just like you, this person wishes for happiness and does not want suffering. Recognizing this shared fundamental aspiration, try to feel connected with the person and cultivate the wish that he or she achieve happiness. It may be helpful if you silently repeat the wish in words, saying something like, "May you be free of suffering and its causes. May you attain happiness and peace." Then rest your mind in this state of compassion. Of the two types of mental cultivation practice, discursive and absorptive, this way of cultivating compassion primarily involves a discursive process. But every now and then it is also good to rest the mind in a state of absorption, somewhat in the fashion of bringing home a concluding point in the course of an argument. So that completes that meditation. So, before our dedication prayers and closing, and I want to remind everybody, next week is being postponed to the 3rd, July 3rd, Saturday, July 3rd. Any questions, discussion, observations about any of the material? Anything anybody wants to add?
I think it's helpful for me to know that without everyone in my life, it's very difficult for me to practice anything. And so I'm very grateful when I have difficulty sometimes with a friend or with a family member or something like that. Although at the time it might not be a fun experience, it's like, okay, it's giving me an opportunity to really practice here, really dig deep, really kind of focus on wanting them to not be suffering, and developing strength in my patience and just being in that experience, and trying to minimize an emotional response because that just perpetuates the negativity in this cyclic existence, trying to stop that pattern, trying to, like you said, how we react impacts so many people. So if I don't allow myself to get to that level of emotional anger or frustration because they're emotionally frustrated, then we don't keep perpetuating the problem. It's like I can try to remain calm.
Yeah.
So it's very helpful, to keep all that in mind, and with what you were talking about today, patience.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, we have no lack of opportunities to practice with the people who are just like right around us.
Exactly.
There's when I was referring in the Seven Limb Practice about a reliance on Guru, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but we also rely on other sentient beings to develop our good qualities. This is how we do it.
Right.
This is how we do it.
Right.
There's a story they tell about great meditators who would spend all of their time up on the top of the mountain, meditating, and they think that they have really achieved some great realizations, and perhaps they have. But then their own guru walks up the mountain, and taps them on the shoulder and says, you know what? Everybody down in the village thinks you're a jerk. And the meditator goes wild. He goes crazy. He loses his composure.
Right.
He's done a lot of work, private work, but he hasn't got out there and worked with others.
Right.
To develop, so that immediately he has this anger arise where it shouldn't happen at all.
There's kind of a weird thing too, and this, I related to this sort of. I've had this happen with my sister, and I think this is something common to mothers. My sister will be talking about some concern that she has about her child, and in a sense, she's practicing patience and forbearance, and letting them work it out on their own and all like that. And I've had it happen where I have said something, made an observation about one of her kids, and holy shimololi, I get it like bam! It's like, what the hell?
Never criticize a mother's children.
Yeah, so I'm going to say sometimes forbearance can be and I'm saying this to you too.
Yeah.
Sometimes for what looks like patience and forbearance is over not knowing how to deal with the problem. And so, one of the ways it can manifest is like, just live and let live and just let it be.
Except when,
knowing the difference
Yeah.
Right.
is tricky there.
Knowing the differences
Yeah.
is
Because you
tricky.
don't also, that's called enabling.
and I think the only way we ever really know the difference is through the actual practice, through
Right,
getting triggered,
And,
so we can see,
right.
I can't, it's sort of, what I say this to Christopher all the time when we talk about politics. And people don't want to believe there's such a level of corruption in politics.
Well.
And I often say yes and no. A lot of times mothers don't want to believe that the husband is committing incest upon one of the children. And so the mother will deny it and fight it.
We lost volume.
we lost volume.
Or maybe,
Anyway, it's kind of a weird.
maybe it could be.
Can you hear me?
Anyway, I mean, these are tricky
Okay.
business.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It
It's
takes a lot
interesting.
of honesty also.
A lot of honesty, a lot of practice, a lot of the
Looking
ups
at-
and downs that happen with practice.
Right, looking at challenging and difficult situations and kind of developing a practice or tools on how to navigate
Yeah.
them in the least destructive way for you and others.
Yeah, and like you said, just keep going. Just keep picking yourself up and
Yeah,
try again. I mean, we fail a lot. We do. But just keep
and
trying.
that's how we learn.
Oh, yeah. And that's the best way to look at it. It's the
Yeah,
best way to look at it.
that's
How
how-
else do we learn but through our mistakes? Really,
Right.
And that's a helpful way to look at it, not instead of beating ourselves up
Right.
about it.
So when those negative emotions arise, like you just gave the example of the practitioner in the cave,
Yeah.
when you're working your best and you think, okay, I'm getting close to conquering this, and then that one person who just knows how to pushes your button, and then you find yourself these emotions riling up, and you go, okay, that's good information. More work that I need to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Very good to be humble, I
Really.
think.
absolutely. So
We
Well,
yeah.
yeah,
oh, I'm still struggling with the compassion for those who have proven that they prefer my suffering over anything else. Like those who have shown that they don't want to see others happy and want to bring out that negativity, no matter how much compassion you try to give, they continue to poke. And I know that you guys were kind of talking about that, but I find it difficult to still give compassion to those and find myself on that same level of existence of equality with those who intentionally want to be cruel.
right.
And I wonder what the Buddha has to say about people like that do have those kind of mental defects and those kind of inability to allow others their compassion,
Mhm.
and not try to bring out any sort of darkness in others.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah,
that's getting a little
that-
dark and it's getting a little deep and we're already about to end, but it's just something that came to my mind during the compassion meditation.
Yeah, then that's a really, really good point. I also struggled with that myself, and I go back to what His Holiness said about, and also Rabina Corton has said this about you. It's similar to, there's some Christian thing that says, love the sinner but not the sin. So you're not having trouble with the person who's being so dark and being so bad and being so evil, even, you might say. What the trouble is with those actions.
Yeah.
Those actions themselves are trouble. And so and when somebody's that bad like that, there's much that you cannot do. And sometimes their karma is just going to have to play out, and they're going to have to meet with the results of that karma.
Right.
But at least we're not adding to that,
or to our own.
or to our own
Right.
to our own state of mind by focusing it all on that individual consciousness and saying they're bad, their actions are
Right.
bad, and they are completely confused about the nature of reality and what's going on.
Right, they're so
And
Right.
and it can't be pleasant. It really can't be pleasant for them.
Right.
You know?
And I remember something that Ajahn Brahm had said at one point. He's a teacher that I listen to every so often. Used to a lot more, but he said, if someone is in a well and you can bring them the stick, and if they try to pull you in the well, you leave them with the stick and they find their own way out. And that's compassion in itself, because you have
Sure.
given them the stick and then it's their choice from there. And that's a hard lesson to learn if you want to be compassionate and kind and you want to be a good Buddhist and you want to do the right things. You're like, well, I want to stay with you and help you out of this. Well, they're just going to pull you down in the well with them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And at a certain point, you just have to leave the stick with them and hope that they find their way out.
I think that's actually pretty wise, until we actually get to the level of Buddhahood where we're omniscient and would know exactly what to do in a situation and how to help that person. If we don't have the skill set to be able to know how to help this person, in some cases, it's better to just leave them with the stick and not let them pull you down. That would be that would be the more compassionate thing to do.
Geshe Dragpa do that a few times.
Geshe Dragpa? Yeah, he did that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could see certain situations, certain students trying to drag him into their home.
That's true. I remember this. Our
He
guru,
wouldn't engage.
Yeah. He would not engage with people who were just trying to drag him into their. But you don't understand my problem, so he would then at some point he would say what he thought, and then he would just disengage.
Right.
Because there was no point. You have to let that person find out for themselves eventually, So that's very,
and
very
those
good
are the
point.
lessons that we learn.
Yeah, that's a really, really, really.
Yeah.
Okay, we should let me bring up the closing dedication prayers, and we'll just say those and call it a session.
Christopher, I was just going to say that I have some relatives who are like that, and what I came to realize, and I didn't understand it until well into, not when I was really young, but as an adult, was that those people, those relatives of mine, are actually profoundly depressed, and that really was the root cause of their negative behaviors. And so I just had to put up a lot of boundaries, like still engage with them to the degree I felt I could, but have boundaries. And when they would start displaying those really negative behaviors, I just wouldn't engage and I just walk away like, oh, I think the bathroom needs cleaning. Or, oh, I think there's a cat that needs some attention in another room. Oh, I think there's Christmas gifts that need to be wrapped. And I would just walk away. And that has done wonders for my relationship with those people. So anyway, if that's helpful at all.
I think that's very helpful. I think that's very wise.
That's leaving the stick.
Yeah, that's the same as what the caller was saying. Just leave the stick, because otherwise they're going to drag you down, And what's the help in that, Yeah.
Right.
That's a really good point. Okay, dedication of merit. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that we may liberate all sentient beings from suffering. And then we can read these last prayers in English. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. May the view of emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Good session.
Pleasure. And so hopefully we'll see you all on July 3rd, not next week. Okay. See you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, over and out.